Alaikum. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Zainab. Please keep the greetings and the introductions going. It makes the room feel alive and less cold. Yeah. So welcome to this really fascinating and interesting call that is being co-hosted by the Muslim Network for Positive Impact in partnership with GiveDirectly. We're really excited to share what we have ahead, as well as to engage with our community. I'd like for us to think of it as collaborative, so please do feel free. There will be an opportunity for us to be in conversation, and so it won't just be us speaking to you. So my name is Zainab Taonga Chira, and I am from South Africa. I'm a governance strategist by profession and a co-founder of the Muslim Network for Positive Impact. You might be wondering what the Muslim Network for Positive Impact is, or MNPI as we like to refer to it as. We are a global community of Muslims with diverse Islamic academic and professional backgrounds who share a common interest and goal to maximize the social impact of our servitude through our careers or just general living practice. And we're inspired and guided by the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah to seek out the most impactful ways to benefit creation. At MNPI, we believe in staying up to date with latest research and evidence-based approaches to ensure that our efforts are informed as well as high. And because of this, we're also quite selective with who we partner and host on calls. And so we don't just host NPOs that often. However, we have been really, we're huge fans of GiveDirectly and the work that they do. It's quite a unique nonprofit because of the effectiveness of their cash transfer model and the program, and the fact that the program lies at the intersection of religious giving and effective giving. So we're really happy to support this initiative. And this is not our first time doing this collaboration. GiveDirectly has been doing this program since 2023, where they started with their Yemen program. And in 2025, again, we're able to support them again with their fundraising efforts in Sudan. And we're happy to support them once again in 2026 with their fundraising efforts in Mozambique. So some of you might not even necessarily know where Mozambique is. It's a country in Southern East Africa, really beautiful country, and so I hope we keep at the forefront of our minds that we're talking about people, real people, and people's lives and dignity, and just trying to support that. Not that we're trying to save or, have savior complexes per se, inshallah. And so we're just trying our best to support those efforts. Without going any further, I'd like to introduce the rest of the panelists for this conversation. I'll begin with my fellow co-founder, Ahmed Gur. Ahmed, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi all. I'm Ahmed. For the last few years, I've been researching this concept of serving with ihsan more generally. So basically based on this idea that we serve Allah through serving His creation, how do we then do that with excellence, with ihsan? And beyond theory, I think these Zakat funds that GiveDirectly run are an excellent case study of what that means. Very glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for that very brief introduction. And I know you will be speaking to us later on. Will, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for spending some time to listen to us today. My name is Will Bishop. I'm based in Maputo, Mozambique, and I'm GiveDirectly's country director here. Really looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks. Nasir, over to you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Will. Lastly, I'd like to introduce Nasser, who has been quite the main person organizing, putting this together, working together. So please, Nasser, can go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, my name is Nasser, and I work here at GiveDirectly. I work on the fundraising team, and I'm leading the fundraising efforts for this Zakat program. been here for about 7 months and been working on this program and trying to think about how we can best offer something to Muslim donors that want to give in a very effective way that's aligned with their religion and their values. And we think we've reached that point. So we're so excited to share about the program with you all.
Thank you, Nasser, for that brief introduction. Just a quick reminder once again that throughout the call, please feel free to reach out via the chat, type in any questions you may have in the chat box. Please, of course, general collegiality is encouraged. So please let us be as reasonable as possible, but we're very much about transparency. So feel free to ask any questions that you may have that may arise. We have people here who are representing both MNPI as well as GiveDirectly who are all open to answering any questions that you may have. And we will have we have set aside a dedicated Q&A time at the end of the presentations. Nasser, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Zainab. So many of you are new to GiveDirectly, so I wanted to share a little bit about the organization and what we do. So GiveDirectly is a nonprofit that sends cash to the world's poorest people, and we are the leading experts in how to design and deliver cash efficiently, effectively, and with dignity for all of the recipients. In 15 years of operation, we've delivered over $1 billion to over 2 million people across 15 countries, and that includes Turkey, Yemen, Bangladesh, as well as Mozambique and other countries across the globe. We deliver that cash to families via mobile money transfers, which are more efficient, more transparent than many of the other forms of aid that you might be familiar with. And that cash is entirely unconditional. So when we give it to recipients, they are enabled to use it on anything that they feel will improve their lives. So why cash? This is not a very common form of aid that most people hear about when they think about donating to international nonprofits. But first, cash is dignified, right? People living in poverty know better than anyone else what they need most, and cash gives them the agency to make those decisions for themselves instead of those decisions being made by the organizations or donors that are thousands of miles away. And importantly, it's also the form of aid that recipients actually consistently say that they prefer. Second, cash doesn't just help people go through hard times and get through hard times. It gives them the opportunity to escape extreme poverty. Families can use that cash to invest in businesses, start small businesses, which allow them to have a steady income, invest in farming and agriculture to ensure that they have reliable access to food, and also keep their children in school so they have better opportunities in the long term. Cash also has a very powerful ripple effect, right? When families receive cash, they spend it and invest it locally, and that supports small shops, hiring labor, strengthening entire communities, and not just individual households. And finally, cash is one of the most rigorously studied forms of aid in the world. There are over 1,000 academic studies on cash transfers, including dozens that GiveDirectly has conducted itself. And the evidence is clear. Cash leads to lasting improvements in health, poverty, reduction, education, and food security.
Thanks, Nasir. So I'm going to sort of speak to you a little bit about Mozambique. What is GiveDirectly doing in the country, and why you should sort of consider donating your zakat this year to individuals in Mozambique when there are so many sort of worthy and urgent crises around the world. I think it's sort of important to recognize the scale of the challenges in Mozambique. And this doesn't grab the headlines in the same way as some other crises, Sudan, Gaza. But the challenges that people are facing here are severe and compounding. And it has been kind of referred to many times as a forgotten crisis, a kind of complex emergency, which just has many underlying factors. So first up, Mozambique is really one of the very poorest countries in the world. 82% of people are living on less than $3 a day, which I always think, if you actually just start to imagine how difficult that would be to do, is an astounding kind of statistic in and of itself. Routinely at the bottom of the sort of human development indexes, the country is already facing, ingrained poverty, even before talking about the shocks. But since 2017, in the north of the country, starting in Cabo Delgado province, which is a sort of resource-rich but marginalized part of the country, there has been an insurgency and an armed conflict which has displaced over 1 million people and is continuing to spread, even in recent months, has moved further south into areas that GiveDirectly is working. Mozambique is also one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. I mean, literally as we speak, there's 600,000 people plus displaced by the worst flooding in 30 odd years across the center and south of the country. Last year, the areas that we work in Nampula were affected by 3 cyclones. There's another cyclone predicted to hit the country this weekend. It is really a country which just bears the brunt of that kind of increasing severity of extreme weather. And obviously what all of this leads to is a food security crisis. So right now, more than 3 million people in urgent need of food assistance. Most parts of the country, well, let me just not say most, but a good chunk of the country is a crisis. That food insecurity, you know, breeds discontent, unrest, and frustration for people as well. Health indicators, particularly in the north and center of the country, are poor. A lot of children don't make it to their 5th birthday. There's a cholera outbreak which has been going on for the last couple of years in Nampula where we work. And so, as I say, there really are these kind of just compounding challenges that people are facing here. On top of all of that, of course, at the beginning of last year, with the kind of dissolution of USAID, a huge chunk of the foreign assistance that Mozambique was receiving was sort of swept out from under people's feet. Our own program was affected by that, I should add. We've been fortunate to kind of rebuild and stay resilient to that, but it has meant that a lot of services and a lot of support for people just disappeared. And I think it's in that context where something that's kind of flexible and bespoke as cash, where everyone will use it in a way that makes sense for them, really find a niche and actually change outcomes, change lives for people. We have been working since 2021. We've delivered a little over $20 million now, reached over 32,000 individual recipients. And this year, I should add actually on the map, the areas that we've been working so far, so Nampula in the north of the country, Sofala in the center, and our sort of support office here in Maputo. But this year we'll be managing quite a large expansion across the center and south of the country, and probably looking to roughly double that figure of recipients reached. So yeah, I'll pass on to the next slide. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. So now I'm excited to share what our actual Zakat program will look like here in Ramadan of this year. Sorry, just a moment. So this program will reach those Muslim families in northern Mozambique, specifically the Memba district that Will spoke about. We chose this region because, as Will mentioned, the need is extreme. Families here are facing chronic poverty alongside armed conflict, natural disasters, and serious health risks, all in a place that receives very limited international aid or global attention. We already have a strong operational presence on the ground in Mozambique, and that allows us to identify and enroll Muslim recipients quickly and to deliver that assistance with speed, transparency, and accountability. Through this program, we aim to reach 900 families, each receiving $550 in direct, unconditional cash to help us meet their most urgent needs. And importantly, this program is fully Zakat compliant. It has been certified by Mufti Faraz Adam and Amana Advisors, as well as the principles of Zakat and Islamic law. 100% of all of the Zakat given through this campaign will reach the recipients. All of our operational costs are covered from separate non-Zakat funds. So every dollar that is raised will be delivered to a family in Mozambique. So no Zakat funds, as I mentioned, are used for operational expenses. Also in accordance with Islam, we are using interest-free non-riba bank accounts, and we work to deliver the funds as quickly and transparently as possible to make sure that there is no delay that is unnecessary. And I'll now hand it over to Ahmed.
Thanks, Nasser. Yeah, I've also gone through GiveDirectly's Zakat policy document, and I must say it's very comprehensive and often goes above and beyond what's usually required for Zakat. Like the 100% policy, where 100% of donations are given to recipients. That's not something that's ordinarily required for something you qualify as Zakat, but GiveDirectly kind of goes that extra mile. Also, going through the document, you can see whenever there's some level of uncertainty of whether the recipient maybe may not be Muslim or may not meet the criteria for some other reason, all of this gets then covered by non-Zakat donations. And there's a lot of sort of protocols in place that's then reviewed by Amana advisors to make sure of this. So that covers the legalistic side. But just to expand on why we as MNPI endorse GiveDirectly, is that we think it really embodies the heart of Zakah. And we mean this in two senses. One, in terms of fulfilling the objective or the maqasid of Zakah. So maqasid Sharia is a field within Islamic studies that studies the wisdom or the objective of the law based on all the available evidence throughout the scripture, throughout the Quran and Hadith. And for the maqasid of Zakah specifically, most scholars often cite the eradication of poverty as a key objective. Now, eradication is a strong word, right? It speaks to this idea of uplifting people out of poverty to the extent that they eventually become zakah givers instead of zakah recipients. So given that this is the end goal, or one of the key end goals of zakah, cash seems to be one of the more obvious solutions. As Nasser mentioned, there's over 1,000 studies on cash, a lot of them, most of them independent, and a lot of them using like highly rigorous methods like randomized control trials, which is a scientific method that allows you to assign this causal relationship between a particular intervention and some metric. And based on a lot of metrics, we see that cash does very well, whether that's increasing income, asset ownership, reducing child mortality, and many others, that some of which Nasser already mentioned. The second sense we mean it in is this religio-ethical consideration. So Dr. Shahrul Hussain, he speaks to this concept of tamlik, which is tamlik in zakah is a discussion that goes back centuries. It's based basically on the word li in the verse of zakah in the Quran that outlines the 8 categories, but there's a li for lil fuqara wal masakin. It's a long discussion, but it essentially denotes a strong level of ownership of the zakah to the recipient. And in summary, there's a strong Islamic position to argue that based on this, the zakah belongs to the recipient. The implication of which Hussein makes the argument that charities don't really have a right to decide what recipient should spend the zakah on without good reason. And that's essentially what we often do when we sort of take our zakah money in cash, we convert it into an in-kind transfer, like a food parcel, and then give it. We're sort of determining what the recipient should use that zakah money for, when based on this argument that seems to be quite a strong position going back many centuries, the money belongs to the recipient to decide what they should and to do with it what they will. There is a caveat that like it should be given unless there's a good reason or with consent. The money should be given in cash to the recipient to do with it as they want. And like some potential reasons might be, say there's been a natural disaster and business aren't back up and people don't have cash to spend things on. This technically isn't true. Often markets bounce back a lot quicker than people expect, and cash still is more useful than an in-kind transfer and a lot more efficient and transparent. But just an example of some of the reasons people give. Other reasons include, they'll say people will spend it on temptation goods like drugs and alcohol. That's at scale, people might point to anecdotal examples, but at scale, that just doesn't hold. In fact, we see often a reduction in spending on temptation goods when you give people cash. So based on this reason that there often isn't a very good reason to not just give people cash that arguably belongs to them, it then becomes an ethical question. Like, for what reason then do we have this rather paternalistic view of giving, given that we know how good the default unconditional cash transfer approach is? So based on these two reasons, fulfilling the objectives of Zakat in an evidence-based way, and just this religio-ethical consideration of first converting money that belongs to a recipient, we think that really hits at the heart of Zakat.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. And I also wanted to, speak a little bit more about, something that, we had spoken about earlier, but something also that Ahmed mentioned about, the effective giving aspect of cash and trying to reach, Muslim recipients through Zakat in a way that is going to be effective and allow them to, inshallah, go from people that are receiving Zakat to, in the future, people that are giving Zakat. What we find when we send cash transfers to people through the studies that we've conducted is that families end up being less poor. They're healthier, their communities are thriving a year to 2 years after cash. Our core cash program that we run here at GiveDirectly showed a 50% increase in income, 61% increase in asset ownership, and other sizable increases in savings and consumption. And within the community, those cash transfers led to a 20% increase in business ownership and a 2.5x boost in the local economic activity. So this is creating opportunities for entire communities. It's not just giving aid to communities that's going to allow them to meet their most fundamental needs, which it does do that, but it gives them an opportunity to empower themselves and their families and hopefully end up in better circumstances in the future. But perhaps most importantly, the programs that we operate here at GiveDirectly have great health outcomes for families. And so study of one of our programs in Kenya last year, found that cash transfers actually resulted in infant mortality being cut in half. There was an increase of 45% of hospital deliveries, and 44% fewer children were skipping meals. And so with these cash transfers and this effective giving, you're not only empowering families, like I mentioned, to meet their most fundamental needs, but you're also enabling them to provide for their families in a more holistic way. You're enabling them with the opportunity to improve their lives and their circumstances across multiple different facets. And they make those decisions for themselves. We don't have a paternalistic view that, we know what's best for them. We allow them, or cash allows them to make those decisions for themselves. And the results show that they make decisions that improve the outcomes of their families and the community. I wanted to also talk a little bit about GiveDirectly's experience with Zakat programs. So this is not our first Zakat program. As Zainab mentioned earlier, we ran a program in 2023, which was our pilot, reaching families in Yemen. And in 2025, we partnered to run a program for Sudanese refugees as well. And the situation in Yemen was very similar to the situation in Mozambique, where families were facing not only extreme poverty, but high levels of displacement from conflict, food insecurity, and health risks as well as a result of the ongoing conflict. And we learned a lot of lessons from that program and the program as well in 2025. And that really informed creating the best possible program that we could here in 2026. So before we open it up for questions, we wanted to share a short video about our Zakat program to hopefully give you a better sense of what the reality is like on the ground for some of these Muslim recipients, and also give you a little bit of added context about this program and the way that we're approaching it.
One of the most neglected crises in the Muslim world today is happening in Mozambique, where millions of Muslims are living in extreme, unseen poverty. Mozambique is often called the forgotten crisis. Home to around 4 million Muslims, it is among the poorest countries in the world, where families are increasingly affected by overlapping crises. Armed conflict, worsening cyclones and flooding, and growing health risks, including cholera outbreaks and high child mortality. GiveDirectly has been working in Mozambique for 5 years, reaching some of the poorest Muslim communities in the northern coastal areas through a simple but evidence-backed, high-impact approach. Direct cash transfers with no strings attached. Zakat is meant to reach people exactly like Abudo and many others who are struggling to secure food, shelter, and stability. And one of the most effective ways to fulfill that obligation is through direct cash. Your zakah is distributed promptly, in cash, a form of zakah deeply rooted in the Islamic tradition, with 100% of funds reaching eligible Muslim families directly. Families can start businesses, invest in their future, and achieve self-reliance. When cash is spent locally, it also supports nearby businesses and helps entire communities recover from crises and grow. Cash transfers are not just short-term aid, they create the foundation for long-term stability and opportunity. This, for me, is the heart of zakah.
And with that, I will turn it back over to Zainab for Q&A.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really interesting stuff, and really looking forward to engaging with everyone through the chats. I see everyone has been doing a good job with the introductions. Amin, and Jazakallah for the dua there, Salman. Yeah, so before we open up for questions, I would just like to also just to remind you that once again, that transparency is very much highly encouraged, and so please feel free to share your questions. If you would like to raise your hand, maybe you could also do that. Just use the raise your hand option just at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to do that. If not, please again to share your question in the chat. I see there's one hand. The first hand I saw was Hasib. Hasib, you may go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. And then please remember that once you've asked your question, each person's allowed one question at a time to ensure that as many people are able to ask a question. And so once you're done, please mute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? All right, cool. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Hasib. I'm in Austin, Texas. Thank you for everyone for having this meeting and for doing this program. I wasn't even aware of the 2025 Sudan program, actually. But I was aware of the 2023 Yemen program. And my question to Zainab, Nasser, and Will at Give Directly generally is there any plans to make this a 24/7, 365 Zakat program? Because I think that's probably one of the best marketing, because as I look at it, this is amazing what you're doing. Actually, the Ahmed and others have talked about how this is actually the spirit of Zakat. And it just seems that if you have kind of like a limited time situation, you really lose a lot of people in terms of marketing and stuff, because people are busy during Ramadan and stuff, and then people give zakat throughout the year and stuff. So is there any plans for that? And I would think that would be the best marketing long-term strategy, to have something that's a 24/7, 365 days a year. Thank you.
Yeah, Hasib, that's... Oh, go ahead, Will. Sorry, yeah. So, Hasib, yeah, that's a fantastic question. That's something that we considered. One of the sort of deciding factors about this is, first and foremost, is do we think that we can reach Muslim recipients and Zakat eligible recipients year round? We work in several countries, and in Mozambique, we have operations in predominantly Muslim area. And so we know that at the moment we can. And if that's something that continues as our programs shift and change, then that is first and foremost the most sort of decision maker is, do we have a Muslim population of recipients that we can reach with that Zakat program? The second thing is, as we're developing this program, and also the reason why we're doing this call, is that we want the community of Muslims giving their Zakat to feel that this is something that that they trust, to feel that whether it's cash, Give Directly, or this specific program is something that they want to give their Zakat to. And depending on the performance of this program, if we feel that the Muslim community felt that this is something that they want to continue to give their Zakat to and share with family and friends, and they believe in the methods and the model, then that is definitely something that we would hope to continue in the future. But I will also say that there's a lot of operational considerations, from the fundraising team to the team on the ground enrolling Muslim recipients, will, finance, compliance, everybody, had to make sure that we are doing this in a way that is in accordance with Islamic principles. And so that takes additional sort of operational concerns that we have to think about. And to ensure that we are doing this in accordance with Islamic principles, and to make sure that it's worth it for us to continue to do that, we would have to see that we're really connecting with the Muslim community and being able to convey this message as something that they would want to support. So if we do see that level of support, then it would justify potentially continuing this as a year-long program.
Thank you for that, Nasser. I hope that was helpful. Hasib, I see there's some questions in the chat, but before we get to that, I think Rakin, you may go ahead before we turn to the chat.
Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. First of all, Jazakallah khairan kathira for the really cool presentation. I was just thinking about, I don't know, have you guys ever like experimented or had any experiences with things other than cash transfers? For example, like graduation programs or other programs that are already rigorously evaluated, and how that would be conducted, what kind of framework zakat could be able to be used in that kind of intervention, so that I don't know. I think that some people, even though there's a lot of rigorous evidence on like the cash transfer, direct cash transfer things, I think a lot of people, especially here in Indonesia, are a bit biased towards things that are somewhat more high touch. And even so, there are many high touch programs such as the graduation approach that are also have also been rigorously evaluated. And I was just curious whether that's something that would be in you guys' radar for the near future, or if anybody's had any experience with that, and how that would be possible in like a zakat framework.
Yeah, Will, maybe if you have any sort of context on this, whether in Mozambique or in the organization more broadly, about any models, potentially even like a cash plus model that has been in discussion.
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually there's plenty of internal discussion around this. Perhaps just to start off, Ahmed had asked to clarify what graduation is in the chat. So graduation, there's variants on this model, but essentially it's a model which has combines kind of mentoring, coaching to build skills, along with generally consumption support. So when I say consumption support, something to kind of stabilize food security, basic consumption, and then typically an asset transfer, which typically is an in-kind asset transfer. And I think it's a really interesting question. And essentially another thing to say is that, this is, particularly in Bangladesh, this is the work done by BRAC. This is a pretty well-studied model, which can be very effective. I think what we actually see is that a lot of the elements of graduation are present in GiveDirectly's model. In terms of the coaching, the mentoring, it's a much lighter touch that we're doing, but we do actually, during our kind of community engagement sessions, prepare people in terms of, some basic financial literacy, make them really think about the opportunity that's about to come to them, encourage people to plan. We're not going to tell you what your plan has to be, but you should have a plan. This is a unique opportunity, and really encouraging people to kind of work things out, figure out a budget, that kind of mentoring is something we already do. And see our cash transfers, this program, for example, $550, that's broken down into a $50 initial payment, which kind of stabilizes consumption in much the way as a graduation program would, allows people to put some food on the table and not plan on an empty stomach. And then an asset transfer, $500. That is a sort of fungible asset in a sense that people can choose to invest how they see fit. So I think all in all, a lot of the elements in the graduation model are present now. What we would kind of say is that we're doing quite a pared back version of graduation, where instead of spending lots of money on lots and lots of touch points, we're able to reach more people with a sort of operationally lighter model, but which the evidence shows is really, really impactful. And so it's something though that we are kind of continuing to iterate on. And actually this year we'll be piloting, like the in-member, actually a new coaching module with a little bit more kind of coaching material and financial literacy, kind of entrepreneurship messaging. So it's something we're kind of experimenting with and definitely open to learning from. But fundamentally, we see the cash as far more effective than any in-kind asset. And actually the costs that we would spend on a very long-term coaching relationship with those recipients probably would start to outweigh, because it would mean we'd reach less people by spending more money on that. So, but it's a live discussion, and it's a great question.
Thank you very much, Will and Rakeen, for that. I see Rakeen has shared a link as well, just for the general audience, in case you want to understand and learn more about the graduation approach. I'm just going to read out some questions from the chat before we continue with the raised hands. There's a question from Gaurav Naya. Gaurav asked 3 questions. Going to be generous, inshallah, and we'll share all 3, and hopefully we should be able to get a succinct response. So the questions are: is there a way to give in South Africa? And will it be tax deductible in South Africa? And thirdly, will we get a report afterwards?
Yeah, great question. I can speak to that. To cover all 3 of the points, in terms of being able to give from South Africa, yes, you can give on our fundraiser page, which I will be sure to share after this call in a follow-up email, from South Africa. It will not be tax deductible in South Africa, unfortunately, but you are still able to give from South Africa. And then in terms of a report, if you mean sort of like a after the program report, and evaluation, yeah, we are planning to send impact updates, so you know how the zakat is being spent and the impact that it's having on the community, if that's what you meant specifically.
I don't know. Just to clarify, maybe Gaurav, could you just could you just clarify in terms of the first question as to whether you were to give in South Africa? Do you mean would you like to donate for the recipients to be based in South Africa? Or are you simply asking whether you can donate from South Africa? Okay. And then there's another question from Taimur. Is there a way to give from the UK that would be eligible for gift aid?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is another one of those things that we are working on doing. What we encourage anybody that wants to give from the UK to do is email either myself or the email that you find on the fundraiser page, and just let us know ahead of time that you're planning on giving from the UK, so that we can work it out and ensure that those funds reach the Zakat campaign, and you're also eligible to claim gift aid as well.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jazakallah Nasser. I see some hands. Awad, you may go ahead. You may unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum
First of all, Jazakallah khairi, and I have 2 questions. The first one is this program specifically directed towards only Mozambique? And the next question is, how do you preserve, because in Islam, intention or the niyyah is very important in your zakah being accepted by Allah. So in this context, from what we've been discussing, I've noticed that zakat is being treated in the general sense like donations. So is on the fundraiser, for example, is there like a specific page to say that this is for the zakat and then this is for donations? Because those 2 are not exactly the same in the Islamic context. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for that question, Awad. Very important question. Thank you for asking. Nasser, would you like to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ahmed, if there's anything that you think is helpful to add as well, that would be appreciated as well. Yeah, so for this specific campaign, and I'll actually link right here in the chat, the specific fundraiser page for it as well. It's very explicitly about zakat for Muslim donors. While anybody can give to the campaign, it is its own standalone zakat program and zakat fundraiser page. We make sure as well to include sort of all the details that any individual wants to know about the campaign as well. We have our certification that is listed on there as well. We have all of the policies that we followed to ensure that it is a zakat eligible campaign, so that people, as they're giving to this campaign, they know that the intention is to give zakat for these recipients in Mozambique. And then to the first part of your question as well, yes, so this is exclusively for recipients in Mozambique, and even more specifically in Memba, which is in the northern portion of the country. Did I answer your question? Maybe Ahmed, if you have anything else you want to add.
I dropped out. I missed the first part of the question. Was it?
Yeah, I can repeat that. I was asking if the program was directed towards only Mozambique recipients, which Nasser has answered. And then the other question was how do you preserve all the niyyah, the intention, if someone is giving zakat, because in Islam, someone is only supposed to give zakat twice. And like, how do you separate zakat and then donation? Because those two, there's sadaq and then there's zakat. So those two are not the same. So when someone is giving zakat, which is an obligatory part of the religion, how do you separate that? Do you explicitly tell them that you're giving zakat and just the Muslim compliance side of it?
Yeah, I think what Nasser mentioned, that there's a specific zakat page, so it's very clear that when you're giving through that specific page, you're giving zakat. And then also, having read the policy documents that GiveDirectly has to follow, you can see it's very clearly separated from GiveDirectly's other funds. And this is for many reasons, including having to ensure that transaction costs and staff salaries and all of that doesn't come from the funds you're donating for zakat, but they come from other funds. So it's very clear. There's a tight following of where the money is going.
Yes, that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jazakallah, both of you. And Nasser has shared the link to the dedicated Zakah link for this fundraiser. So please feel free to click on it to take you there and to share it as well. I see another hand, Abdurrahman. You may go ahead.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum all, and good morning and good afternoon to our non-Muslim friends here, and thank you for working with us on this. And good to see you, Nasser, again. We've talked about this before, but given that the kind of the categories of who gets to receive zakat and who gets to work on zakat, there's like opinion on, only Muslims can work on administration of the zakat. How does GiveDirectly ensure that part of it, right? Because we know that GiveDirectly is majority non-Muslim, so there's this part of it, that who gets to work on the zakat and who gets to work on administering the zakat part. I don't know if you thought of this. I'm sure you did, but this part of the clarification part of it. I had a question, which was, how do you ensure that it goes to the intended recipients? But you mentioned that that's 100% goes straight to the recipients. But the administration part of the zakat is the question that I have. How do you ensure that it remains within kind of like Muslim workers, etc., etc., etc.?
Yeah,
and thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, and it's good to see you again. So before we established anything related to this program, we first thought about where is the best place that we think we can distribute funds to Muslim families, and then from there we went immediately to Amana Advisors, which is the advisory board that essentially laid out what it is that we need to do to ensure that this is a Zakat compliant campaign, from the bank accounts that we use to the timeliness of distributing the funds to ensuring that 100% of the funds go directly to recipients. And so they helped us sort of lay out everything that we need to do to ensure that that this is a Zakat compliant campaign. And then from there, we just worked within sort of the boundaries that they set. And so in terms of the actual workers being Muslim, the ones that are distributing it, that was not a requirement that our advisor and the organization that certified our program laid out. So long as, there are people that are familiar with, the Islamic requirements, including myself, that are going to be sort of ensuring that every other sort of part of the organization that is touching this program is operating within that compliance. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the finance team, I made sure that all of the stipulations that our advisor set out for us were being followed by the finance team in terms of segregating the funds between Zakat and non-Zakat funds, using a bank account that, doesn't collect riba as well. So we really followed within the strict guidelines of what they laid out for us. And I can also share sort of that program outline that they gave us if you want to review it and see what those restrictions and requirements were.
Yeah, and if I could just
I have
add
no
to that.
qualification, sorry. I have no qualification to review.
Yeah, no, if I could just also add to that opinion, there is a bit of a difference of opinion here. But I think one of the core reasons for why sometimes people want the workers to be Muslim as well is that often the workers will receive a portion of the zakah as well. Under the category of zakah, collectors can also receive zakah. But in this scenario, all the zakah funds go directly to the recipient. So you don't sort of have the situation where the workers are even getting any of the zakah money.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Zakallah. Shakil, you may go ahead and mute yourself. Gaurav, I've noted your questions and I will get to them once we get through the other people as well, just to give as many people an opportunity to ask a question.
Thank you, Zainab. Hello and assalamu alaikum to everyone. Thank you so much for sharing today. My question really, firstly, I'll caveat by saying I've been following GiveDirectly for a few years, totally down with the program in Mozambique. But to ask a bit of a tricky question, perhaps, if I'm trying to convince my friends to give zakat to GiveDirectly in Mozambique, and they reply, well, I give money to Islamic Relief or my welfare trust, and they have a similar, say, 100% donation policy. So why should I kind of shift my attention towards GiveDirectly's Mozambique campaign? What would your response be?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, that's something that we thought about extensively. I think first and foremost, as anybody's thinking about where to give their zakat, a lot of the initial thoughts center around what do they hold closest to their heart. And one of those things, for example, as a Palestinian, is I tend to give my zakat to anything that's going to go to Palestine, Gaza, and things like that. And so I think fundamentally, when people think about where they want to give their zakat, it's what is closest to their heart. And I make no effort to try to convince someone, to not give to one place and to give to another. I think in terms of, why this program, why Mozambique, why Cash, why GiveDirectly, is so many of the other, very visible programs that other organizations run go to places that have extreme need. What makes this circumstance and this situation, very unique is that Mozambique has so many of those factors that we see in other countries, but it doesn't have the international aid and attention that those countries get. I believe fundamentally that, there is always obviously a decision being made about where is the money most needed to help people. But I also believe that there are many forgotten and underserved Muslim communities in other parts of the world. And I do think that, Zakat funds should reach those people as well. So I think very high need, very low sort of visibility and recognition across the international community. Most people don't know about Mozambique and the Muslim community there. And then I think in terms of the Cash model, what makes it so unique is that whatever cause or issue Muslim donor cares about the most, Cash improves that substantially. Like, let's say you're somebody, for example, that cares about the well-being of mothers and infants. Like I mentioned earlier, we saw in Kenya, just giving cash to families resulted in nearly half of infant deaths decline in those villages. Let's say you're somebody that cares about education. We had a report from our program in Rwanda came out just a few days ago that showed that in those villages, 128 students had dropped out of school because they couldn't afford school fees. After receiving cash, 126 of them went back to school. In those same villages, we see people after receiving cash, over 150 built new homes, over 2,000 refurbished their homes. So if you care about people have access to shelter, that's another thing. And so I think what is unique about cash and why, we encourage people to consider this option is that whatever, issue you hold near and dear to your heart, cash helps address that issue. And then on top of that, it adds the dignity aspect to it, which is that these families are being able to decide for themselves. As Ahmed mentioned, we're not making decisions for them. We're trying to be as in line as possible as we can with the Islamic tradition that the zakat belongs to the recipient. So yeah, that's what I have to say on that. Ahmed, if there's anything or Will that you want to add in on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, on our end, where we've sort of, generally hosted GiveDirectly, not some other organizations, is just sort of the level of transparency, but also the amount of research that they do on their own programs as well. It's something that's just extremely rare, where you do a randomized control trial on your program, where you have one area where you're not giving, one area where you are giving, and you look at those outcomes over the long term, and you continuously do these studies. I think it's a very sort of a unique aspect of GiveDirectly.
Yeah. I think I'd also like to add is that I think it's important as well that there will always be multiple, in fact, actually way more deserving and worthy causes to give your zakat to than you may possibly be able to give to. And so it's always a value judgment, as it has been made clear by both Nasser and Ahmed. And so even when we partnered with GiveDirectly, yes, they're pretty rigorous, but also, as someone who's based here in South Africa, I had to also ask myself, like Ahmed as well, we're both based here in South Africa, why would we partner with an organization that's doing this kind of intervention in Mozambique, in a country where we also do have, worthy people who we could easily just say, we should prioritize programs that run in South Africa, in our country of origin. But it's also about just thinking of how sometimes that there is definitely that there is value in distributing your zakah across different causes and not just thinking about it in a very select few. And I think this is a conversation that has also been ongoing, especially online, when we talk about just the different crises around the world, and people refer to multiple crises as the forgotten crisis. And so I think we're all quite aware that there are many quote unquote forgotten, meaning there's a lot of neglect of multiple places. And so this is our effort of trying to broaden our audience and our community's site of awareness of where there is need, where they could also lend and give of their zakah and whatever it is that they can do to assist. So perhaps maybe just thinking about it from that point of view might be helpful as well. I see I see Holly, but Holly, you may unmute and ask a question.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Holly Radice, and I'm with the CALP Network. For those that don't know us, we are a consortium of organizations that's focused on humanitarian cash and voucher assistance to make it more effective and people-centered. GiveDirectly is a member of the CALP Network, and we work throughout the world. Really interesting to learn from you all on this, and I just had a question about targeting. So what I have learned from you all is that with zakat, it needs to be fast, which is great because we love that in any type of humanitarian action. A question I have though, because this is a major issue in all humanitarian response, but specifically for cash, because people get a little bit more antsy about it, is people who are receiving assistance need to know when they're getting it, how they're getting it, and how much they're going to get it, right? So if you have to do it fast and you only have a certain amount of money, right? Like people are putting into the Zakat account and say you have $10,000 and it's being put into the $550 to be able to give to people, there's by default, there's some people that aren't going to get it. So talk a little bit about how you're doing the messaging to people, if it's going in different tranches within communities, or your, kind of Give Directly style of like blanketing a community, but talk to me about targeting and how you deal with that issue of some people not getting it at the same time. Over.
Yeah, Will, I think that's the perfect question for you.
Sure, happy to take that. So we I think as Nasir said, we'll be ensuring that the Zakat funds go out as soon as possible. So within the month that we receive the funds, they will be committed to an enrolled Muslim recipient that month. That person will then, typically the way that it works is they're enrolled, let's say in month 1, there's other activities going on in terms of auditing that enrollment, providing them with a phone, getting them set up with mobile money. But essentially that happens in the first month. In the second month, they get the sort of smaller consumption size payment, stabilize things at home, allow them to start making a plan. That's around the time that we're also doing some more of these kind of business skills coaching type activities. And then in the third month, they'll receive their lump sum $500. After that, there's some monitoring. So I guess that is to say that, from the moment the funds are received, within 1, 2 and a bit months, those funds will have been fully dispersed, and we'll have already kind of assigned those funds to a recipient, within a couple of weeks of receiving those funds by the end of that month. In terms of kind of managing, you mentioned, Halil, that we strongly prefer a blanket coverage approach. This is, when we're working in high poverty rural areas like Member, really it is extremely difficult, both from a kind of technical perspective, but from a moral one as well, to try to separate people into more or less vulnerable. In these villages, everyone is vulnerable to all intents and purposes by any comparison with our own lives, and trying to say that this neighbor has slightly better off than his neighbor, it's just going to lead to tensions and break our kind of social contract with the recipients. So we do apply that blanket coverage. We select based on geography. When we start working in a particular community, we'll make a commitment to cover all of the households in that area. And so we will also be planning our program so that where that kind of geographic limit lies, that is not kind of cutting across, that's not falling in the middle of a village or something. There's some like logical boundary to where the program ends to avoid that kind of, perceived unfairness across that line. These funds would be helping us to continue expanding the program. The program is already up and running, and we have field teams enrolling people already. These we will kind of continue to fundraise to continue our program in Member, because it's really one of the most kind of high need areas that we work in, and we're seeing a lot of impact. So that's to say, we wouldn't be kind of waiting for the funds and then launching activities from scratch. It would be contributing to ongoing work in these, almost entirely Muslim communities.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so you are saying like the Zakat will complement, and whatever you need in addition to that, Give Directly will sort it out, because that's really what my question was. So if you have a committed 10,000 households and you can only cover 8,000 by Zakat, you are going to cover the other 2,000.
Precisely. So we don't survey people and ask about the religion, but communities are kind of 95% Muslim. Anyone living in those areas who's not a Muslim would be covered by other funds. We wouldn't only give to Muslim households and exclude non-Muslims because of the tensions that might cause, but we would not use Zakat funds to do that.
All right. Thank you, Will. I hope that was that was satisfactory for you, Holly, and thank you as well for your questions. Just going back to the chat, Gaurav had some questions, of which two Nasser has answered, but I'll just, for the benefit of everyone on the call, we are aware of the time, so we're going to try and be as succinct as possible. So is there a minimum size for this program to go ahead? And what if you raise more than the program size? Of which Assad has responded in the chat to say that there is no minimum size for the program to go ahead, and any zakah given through the zakah page will be delivered to Muslim recipients regardless of how much or how little. And if we raise more than the target amount on the page, we will enroll additional eligible Muslim families to ensure that the funds are delivered to these families. Basically reiterating what Will just shared. And then there's a third question about, I think so an important question is, how is fraud controlled for? Perhaps maybe this is a question for Will, very important one. Could you please help us with that answer?
Hard to summarize everything we do to control for fraud in the little time that we have, but we have, it's obviously front of mind. It's something that we have to be kind of, constantly mitigating and looking out for. To try to summarize, I guess first thing is knowledge is power. So preparing people, making sure they understand from the minute that we start working, firstly, what to expect, so that if something that diverges from that happens, they know to alert us. Making them aware of the different mechanisms that they can complain, report a problem, whether that's with our own team, whether that's with mobile money agents, whether that's with local leaders, etc. To name some of them, we hold help desks in the communities for people to come and speak to us. We have a free of charge, multilingual kind of call center that people can phone up to ask for advice. That's probably the most common one. We have kind of teams following up, calling everyone up they receive each transfer to check that they've received it safely, that they haven't had to pay any bribes to anyone, that it hasn't caused any problems at home. All of these things to kind of guarantee people's protection and search for signs of fraud. And then, of course, we have a separate audit team who we actually, they actually are in a separate office, and we really keep them completely separate from our program delivery team that goes back and does kind of follow-up checks on a sample of these recipients to make sure that everything happened with integrity, quality, etc. And I guess the final thing is, part of my job is around the team culture. We just need to build an environment where people will not indulge in fraud, and if they see signs of something that looks suspicious, they will whistleblow, they'll raise a flag. So off the top of my head, I think those are some of the things, but there's other things too, even included how we work with the mobile money operators, the telcos operators, looking for flags in the data. If there's anything suspicious, they'll let us know. So we spend a lot of time trying to mitigate that. But I will say we've not suffered a significant fraud, so it's something that it seems to be working.
Thank you very much for that, Will. Hasib, I think you're the last one with your hand up. You may go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks for letting me follow again, everyone. Jazakallah khairan for everything everyone's doing and letting me ask another question. Two real quick questions, maybe for Nasser, but as you know, we talked about this at length. The American Muslim community is definitely trying to. Whoa. Hello? Does anyone can hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh man, my computer just went out for me for a second. Oh well, the American Muslim community, has there been any effort to try to get American Muslim scholars? Because as all the Muslims here know, this is very much it's not really charity for Muslims; it's really a tax. So people are just looking for a place to give. And the other question I have, I guess more for Will, is how do you guys gauge for incredible amounts of inflation? Because I'm seeing that it says not only the 900 families, but also youths who are 18 and to 21. I'm not sure exactly, but is there if you give a spike of money, is there a possibility that a lot of people prices will go up? So a loaf of bread will be much more expensive. But those are the questions I have. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Yeah, Hasib, great questions. I'll cover the first part and then turn it over to Will to cover the inflation part. In terms of working with scholars and other folks about this program, yeah, we're working on building a large network of Muslim writers, scholars, academics, folks that are prevalent on social media and have large Muslim audiences to kind of build this surrogate network to try to get the message about this program out. We actually have like a great sort of evaluation, deep dive evaluation of our program that's actually being ran by a very brilliant woman in London that is reviewing our program and looking at it from the perspective of effective cash giving, but then also from the principles of Islam. And we're hoping to publish that here in the next week or so. So we are building sort of this network of voices that are very well versed in these topics, not just to blindly promote the program, but to really do a critical evaluation of what it is that we're trying to achieve. And if it's something that they feel is different and aligned with sort of their perspectives on zakat and Islamic giving and things like that, then they will help us promote that. But we're really trying to pressure test this program because I know that there's a lot of questions about how zakat funds are being used. There's a lot of online discourse where people feel like it's not being used in the way that it's supposed to, and that organizations are starting to do very strange things with zakat giving. So we want people to feel that ask us as many questions, push back as much as you want, because this is something that is not it's not a joke. Right? People take it extremely seriously. It's a duty, it's an obligation for Muslims, and they want to make sure that the recipients are benefiting to the utmost, but that also they're doing their religious duty and they're doing their due diligence to ensure that it's being treated in the right way.
And then I think there was a second question around inflation for me. So we have studied this before in Kenya in an RCT, a randomized control sort of experimental trial there. And they found inflation of less than 1%. So there was some increase around the time that the transfers were sent, but it was not a kind of drastic shift. Within our program, it's worth remembering as well that we're enrolling people on a rolling basis. So at any given moment, there is certainly an injection of cash going, but it's not that we're kind of enrolling everyone, then waiting for the same moment and sending everyone at exactly the same time. So that the injection of capital is somewhat smooth. And what we tend to see is, so long as there is some connectivity to markets, and member is, access is poor, but there is still connection, particularly by sea. The market responds. If people pump the prices up, another supplier will come in and they'll undercut them, and then things will stabilize. So we haven't seen inflationary effects so far in member. We are going to try to sort of keep studying this question though, and in Malawi, the program there, which is operating at a particularly large scale, is trying to understand, like, does that answer that I just gave you now hold true when you're working at the scale of an entire district? Is it true if you send 150,000 people cash in one area over a year? Is that still true about inflation? And so I think we don't know the answer to that question yet, and it's something that we're going to study over the next couple of years. But certainly in member at the scale we're working at there, that hasn't been a problem.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for that. Well, Jazakallah. Everyone, I don't see any further questions. Thank you so much. I know we're very much way over time. Thank you all for joining us today and for your patience and for sticking with us. Feel free to reach out to the team. So feel free to email Nasser. Nasser will share an email. I think you can see it on your screen on the slide. There's both Ahmed and Nasser's emails. So they're happy to address any questions you may have. And we hope that this call is informative for you, and we'd love for you all to share this program with any friends or family that you think may be interested. Have a great week, and Ramadan Mubarak. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. May Allah accept your act of ibadah, and thank you to the Give Directly team as well, and MNPI. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thanks, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Everyone.